Good evening, Groton, and welcome to another exciting edition of the Select Board meeting on Monday, February 11th, 2019, in the second floor meeting hall here at the Town Hall. Today we will do, after we review this agenda, we'll do some announcements, followed by a public comment period. Filed under the Town Manager's Report, we have our agenda schedule, and we intend to approve a bond anticipation notes for Highway Department, Safety Radios, and Whitney Well project totaling $1,040,485. Approve common victual license for the Station House Restaurant. Yay. Consider ratifying the Town Manager's appointment of Peter Violet as patrolman for the Groton Police Department. Review and consider approving the charge for the Select Board Affordable Housing and Country Club Review Committee. Review the proposed definition of what constitutes an event under the proposed ticket tax legislation. Establish a K-9 fund for the police department. Ongoing iterations of our FY 2020 budget discussions. Under other business, we have discussed the Education Promise Act resolution request. Review and potentially approve contract for outside investigator. Statement by the Select Board concerning comments made by Member Rebecca Pine at the Select Board meeting on Monday, January 28, 2019. And consider requesting the Town Manager total compensation comparisons from the Personnel Board. We have our ongoing issues list. And then we have Select Board liaison reports where we may or may not have reports. And under minutes, we intend to take up the regularly scheduled meeting minutes of January 28th, 2019, as well as those of February 4th, 2019, after which we will be adjourned. Under announcements, I understand that there is a very important announcement, so I'll let that take precedence over everything else. Thank you, Vanessa.
Hi, so I'm Vanessa Abraham, director here at the Groton Public Library, and just here to announce our Groton Reads pick for this year. Groton Reads is a wonderful event to bring the community together around a book and to celebrate reading and lifelong learning through a variety of programs and events and bringing the community together. So this year's book is The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry. You all were given a copy. Thank you to the GPL Endowment Trust. And it's a wonderful light read that's fun about a small town in Massachusetts, a bookstore owner. Things are not going well for him, but then suddenly a surprise turns up in his bookstore and it changes his life and brings the community together. One of the most charming things, this is a good audience, one of the most charming things about the book is the local police chief starts a book discussion series at the bookstore called Chief's Choice, and our own Chief Luth will be doing that on Wednesday, March 13th, so this is a good crowd to announce that to. But we have a whole bunch of events going on at the library. It starts at the end of the month and runs all the way through March. So I hope you'll join us. Check this out at the library or online. Hoopla is free to everybody. You can download it instantly as an ebook, as an e-audiobook right now on your phones with your library card number. That's all you need. And it's a really fun read. And talk about it with your neighbors and friends and family.
Is this Life Imitates Art, Vanessa? She's coming in to discuss things? All right.
Well, it just lent itself
right?
to it, talk to your audience. So.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Thanks. I already have a copy. I'm taking it on vacation.
We'll put Josh's here, Vanessa. I'll put Josh's in his,
Right.
and we'll give it to him on the 25th when he returns. Okay, are there any other announcements by board members, by the town manager? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comments. Any public comments? Wow, we're getting right to it today. That's excellent. All right, Mr. Town Manager.
Mr. Chairman, the treasurer collector's here tonight. Mike, I'd ask you to come up to the table. The board needs to approve and sign some bond anticipation notes. As part of our debt planning schedule, Mike has taken bids on February 7th in the amount of $1,040,485 for highway equipment, safety radios, and the Whitney Well construction project. The bids came in at, I believe, 2.29%, which is a very good price. And we also paid off some of the items that we permanently borrowed last fall, the senior center, ladder truck, and Lost Lake. So we're very excited with the rate that came in, and Mike's here to answer any questions you have and ask you to sign off on these, vote to approve and sign off on these notes. Michael?
Good evening, everyone. I didn't bring you any gifts. I apologize for that.
No cash?
I would love to get 3 signatures, though.
We might be able to give you 4 if you're lucky.
As Mark indicated, we have 3 remaining short-term bond anticipation notes. We have the police, fire and radio equipment, the highway, loader and truck, and the Whitney well. For your budgeting purposes, the police, fire, and radio equipment are general fund, funded through free cash. The highway equipment, we're funding through the annual capital stabilization fund, and the Whitney well is a ratepayer water department service debt. The water department wants to continue to run these out short-term, and they're paying substantial monies down on it each year. We're doing the same thing, obviously, with the highway equipment, $80,000 a year. It'll be paid off in another 3 years. And the police and fire radio equipment, we've also budgeted to continue to pay that down, plus hopefully see rates stay below 3%, which is about what we borrowed for last fall. So this came out good. It's what we were hoping for. We had budgeted the interest for this, and it came in about $1,500 less than.
We budgeted $98,000 in the budget. It came in less than what we budgeted?
Yeah.
It's good
A little
news.
bit less, so, it's all pre-approved debt, and, I do have 5, signature pages, when you're ready to so do that.
Yeah, who pays for my carpal tunnel?
So we would ask the board to vote to authorize the bond anticipation notes and sign off on them. Please.
Take a motion, please.
Oh.
I move that we approve and authorize the bans for the highway equipment, safety radios, and Whitney well construction in the amount of $1,040,485 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any further comments from the public? All right, all those in favor, so I'm saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
I'll start with John, you can run it down the line, please. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the board to approve a common victual license for the Station House Restaurant LL located at 28 Station Avenue. The hours of operation will be Monday through Saturday from 8 to midnight, 8 a.m. to midnight.
Board members?
I'm sorry. A motion, I move that we approve a common victual license for the Station House Restaurant LL located at 28 Station Avenue.
Second?
And so noted, the hours of operation will be Sunday through Saturday from 8 a.m. until 12 midnight. Any further discussion from the board? Any further jubilation or
Yes.
outcries of yay from the public? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? I heard that unanimous as well. Thank you.
Chief, I'd ask you and Peter to come up to the table. Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to, on the recommendation of Police Chief Michael Luth, I've made an appointment of a police patrol officer for the town of Groton. I'm gonna ask the board to ratify that appointment tonight. Peter Violet has been a full-time officer for 29 years. He served with the Ringe, New Hampshire Police Department and the Fitchburg State College Police prior to transferring to the Shirley Police Department in 1996. In Shirley, he's held the rank of sergeant for 15 years with prior experience as a patrol officer, investigator, and corporal. He holds an associate degree in criminal justice administration from Mount Wachusett Community College. He's passed the required employee physical, psych exam, congratulations on that, an extensive background investigation, and I had a chance to review the background investigation. It was impeccable. Peter's gonna bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the Groton Police Department, and I'm very excited to make this appointment on Mike's recommendation, and I'd ask the board to ratify that appointment this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Board members?
I move that we ratify the appointment of Peter Violet as a patrolman on the Groton Police Department and welcome him aboard.
I'll second.
I heard that with Mr. Geiger first.
Me too.
So you're moving from sergeant to patrolman here in Groton?
Yes,
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? So that's unanimous. Thank you and welcome aboard.
Congratulations.
Do we want to handle item number 7 right now as well?
Yeah, that's a good point. While the chief is here, as you know, we've been getting some really good donations. As I told you last week, we're up to $9,520. There's a GoFundMe being run by Lawrence Academy that's up over $2,700. So we're very excited to do that. In order for the town accountant to keep this money and expend it, the board needs to vote to authorize a K-9 gift fund. So I'd ask the board to take that action this evening.
What's the dollar value up to, Mark?
We're up to $9,520 in our town gift fund.
Great, excellent, thank you. Anybody like to make that motion, please?
I move that we create and authorize a police department K-9 gift fund.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further questions, ideas, concerns? Becky,
I
fine.
was just going to comment, Mark, I'm not sure if your total included, we had a note from Groton School saying that they were wanting to contribute to that, and I forwarded that to you.
Oh, no, that 9520 does not include that. That's right. Thank you, Becky. Groton School is donating, most recently, another $1,000. We haven't received the check yet. When we get that, that'll go into the gift fund as well. So thank you for reminding me.
Okay, anything from the chief?
I just point out that the gift fund, people look at the purchase price of a dog. It's a continuous cost. You know, typical working life of a working dog is 8 years. So beyond the purchase price, there are continuing costs with medical expenses, food, supplies,
Insurance.
training, insurance. And although the gifts are very greatly appreciated, if you look at it over an eight-year period, that's all I'd ask you to keep in mind.
I believe it is the intention of this town to continue to fund the budget to continue having this officer on our, is it okay to call an officer?
Officer, absolutely.
On our force. so-
Four-legged officer.
A
Yep.
four-legged officer on our force, so, the donations certainly help us to, get the onset coming, and then if people wish to continue donating and continue offsetting the budgetary cost of, keeping an officer like this on the force for the entirety of the town, that's everybody's prerogative. Now that gift funds have been established, it can continue to receive donations throughout throughout the lifetime of the town. So, I'll take a vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
I heard that unanimous.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, as discussed last week, I drafted a charge for the so-called Affordable Housing and Country Club Review Committee for the board's review and discussion. I've given you a copy of that draft charge, and it's on page 5 of your packet. I've also provided you with the 2 previous studies that were done on the country club. One was done back in 2010 when the selectmen appointed a committee. Another was done back in 2014 when the town hired a consultant to come in and look at the future of the club. So what we did is we drafted a charge, and if you go to page 5, you'll see the charge of that committee, made up of 5 members appointed by the select board. I've given it a committee charge based on comments that the board made at the meeting last week. These were the comments that the board wanted to see in that particular committee. And then I had Fran Stanley look it over because Fran was part of it as well, and she signed off on it. So I know that Becky has some questions and concerns about moving forward with this, and I know she's provided some additional information and an alternate charge for the 2 committees. So I'll stop talking now and let her make her case.
Becky?
So yeah, as Mark and I talked about it, and as I thought more about our discussion last week, I realized that I thought we were perhaps mixing 2 different tasks into the same committee. What's on the board is a crack at separating them. And I don't know whether you want to look at this in detail tonight or not. My thinking was that the vision for the country club is an important task that, as John pointed out, really hasn't been done before. And I think that although there are a lot of people who are completely committed to continuing to own the country club. There are also people in town who may not be. And that if we were to proceed directly with a committee that was charged to do both the study of creating the vision for the country club and exploring the housing option kind of simultaneously, I think that could backfire on us. I think the town deserves us to do a thorough study and answer that question once and for all about the country club, and explore actually what are the options available to us in owning that and expanding perhaps on the recreational activities, bringing the sewer to it, expanding or improving the facilities that are there. And I think we need a committee that's focused on that is a very large charge to begin with. I think we should ask them to do that, and then based on that deliberation, if housing is seen as if the decision is yes, we should continue to maintain this property, and if housing is seen as something that is worth exploring on that property as a way of enhancing it and increasing the value to the town, then we have perhaps a different committee, perhaps there's some overlap of members to actually explore all of the questions about housing. What kind of housing, where, how much, who's it for, how are we going to do it? The town, I think, probably doesn't want to become a developer, but how do we decide what we want and then hand it off to somebody else, and how does it get paid for? All of those things. So I took a crack this afternoon at breaking the chart that Mark had created into two components, and what's highlighted in yellow is wording that I changed. So this one is just around the country club. Those two previous studies have a lot of information in them. One of them is 10 years old, one is, the other one did not have a date.
2014.
Okay, 2014. So building on that and expanding. That was my thinking.
So
Allison?
I was thinking much along the same lines. What I'm kind of looking puzzled and struggling with is this document didn't start as the one that's in our packet, right?
This is the one that was in our packet with stuff taken out of it that related to the housing and put in another document, which is less complete. And then some revision and rewording of the part about the country club.
Okay, but you said that the yellow is what you changed, right?
Yes, yes. And I took out the words affordable housing from the title in that first paragraph.
I'm sorry, I want to get the other document that Becky
So I
did.
was wondering, like number 2, where did that come from?
I divided one sentence into two. You're
Oh,
back
I
on,
see.
you're
Okay.
back on the document with yellow.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking for the other document. This is the one you want here?
In our packet is,
So the one that Mark created said,
This is the document that I gave the board.
Right.
That's what's in the packet.
That's what's in the packet.
that's what's in the packet. These two I just sent late this afternoon because I only created them this
on
afternoon.
our drive, on our Google Drive, the other two items are there.
So the way it was written, in Mark's draft, number 1 says provide a vision and recommend whether it should remain. I just divided that into two sentences.
I'll keep flipping back and
John?
forth if you want.
I haven't had a chance to look at the document proposed by Becky.
Right.
My feelings are generally consistent with what you've said. My reaction was we're cramming too much into one thing, and the vision really needs to get nailed down before we start moving pieces around, so to speak. But I'd like a chance to read this document and what the other document might look like before we vote on where we're going here.
Yeah, if you,
Okay.
may I add something else here?
Well, I think what you've heard is that both members Geiger and Allison would like to review what you've sent before they can have a
Absolutely.
reasonably intelligent conversation here. So perhaps it makes sense to table this item and put it back on our 25th agenda.
So let me just, since I won't be here on the 25th, just point out, I also extended the time.
March 2nd.
Pardon me?
I would suggest waiting until
I
you
can
return from
make it March-
vacation,
March
there's no
2nd.
rush.
I apologize, I neglected to remember that you were out the 25th, so I don't mind if it's the
March
The
2nd.
March
Fourth,
2nd,
March
March
4th.
4th or 2nd meeting, whichever that is.
Okay,
4th.
I'm fine with that. And the other one, if you just, could you just put that up on the screen, the housing one?
Sure.
I didn't have, any of your format there. And again, it's a rough draft, but I think that's a secondary process, and maybe we don't need to fix the charge on this committee at this point, because we're probably not empowering two committees to start at the same time.
Why wouldn't we?
Well, if we want to give the first committee time to determine the question of whether housing should be there. I mean, I could discuss that. Maybe it's worth doing them both simultaneously, but it seemed like there's a first and second.
John?
I would also ask that this task for the committee include some determination on the type of housing that's being looked for, whether it's townhouses or units that are all in one piece on the same level, and these kinds of considerations.
In any housing-related committee, absolutely.
If there is a demand for 55 and over.
Yeah.
The other piece, just to kind of throw this out there, I think we need to flesh out a bit more what the committee should consist of in terms of qualifications or subgroups. Are we looking for a finance committee member? What are we looking for? My approach as I was thinking about this was that we would basically appoint a larger committee and then have them break into two subcommittees, one to do the housing side and one to do the country club side, and then have them come back together. But
Yeah, at what point does making a generic affordable housing committee impede upon the elected affordable housing trusts that we have here in the town? There's already a body instituted to tackle this. I do not wish the select board to appoint a committee that becomes in direct co-petition, if you will, with that board's purview. If the Affordable Housing Trust, which wish to ask the Board of Selectmen to help them designate an affordable housing committee, and it could be a co-owned committee, or there would be some recommendations would go up, I would be in favor of that, but I can't see the board put us down the direction of doing a committee that is in direct violation of perhaps what another board is already doing. Yeah, Allison.
so I was just going to say, I think if we go back to our goals, one of the pieces of this goal was to understand what the different existing entities do and should be doing. I also think that the study and analysis that Fran had talked about last week will probably answer a lot of, or all of these questions. So I agree that I'm not sure we need to,
And
Fran,
Barry,
since you're sitting there in the audience, is it fair to ask that question? Given these 4 questions we got on the board, are these something that that audit you're considering will the project you're considering that I think we approved? Yeah,
Right.
that will cover. Can we give Fran the microphone, Art? Thank you.
Thank you. The housing production plan?
Yes, thank you.
We'll certainly look at what's needed in town, what the town wants, what sites they'd rather have affordable housing, of what sort. That's all about the housing production plan. And I feel like what happens on any given site, though, at any given time, is sort of what the townspeople coalesce about being their priorities at that time. Like the greatest need that's just out there, period, is for low-income rental housing that's for families.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we're looking at something that's for home ownership, people more moderate income, age restricted, You know, and I feel like we need all kinds of affordable housing. That's what's envisioned for this particular site at this time. But if we look and said statistically, what does town and the Commonwealth need, they need that other. But how Groton gets to its 10% or how it marches in that direction is its own discretion, whether build this kind of housing or that kind of housing. It's all needed.
Yeah, I understand, and I'm gonna say it because it should be said and be transparent, that fiscally, I think that people find the idea of moving seniors into mixed, you know, we'll call it, high-density housing, creates less of a burden on the town from a schools and funding point of view. Now, it's not my view, it's not my feeling, but I just wanna make sure that that's out there, that, there is a saying that gets said often that we'd rather have conservation land or over 55 housing than have low rental income for families because of the costs of educating their children, and the resulting property taxes that don't come as a result. So it's fair to have that out there and say that I disagree with it wholly, but let's see what happens. Becky?
Yeah, as you were speaking, I thought, yeah, calling this the Affordable Housing Committee is actually a misnomer. I think the focus, at least as I was assuming from our previous discussions, this is a country club housing committee to make decisions. If the other committee determines that housing at the country club makes sense, then we need a committee to explore what kind of housing it should be, where it should be, how much, blah, blah, blah. And I think absolutely, I know that the biggest need for affordable housing is not for over 55. However, I believe there is also a need in this town for people who are over 55 to downsize. And I have heard that, but it's not the same as affordable housing. And I don't want to sneak it through and imply that that's what we're trying to do. I think any housing has to be, for lots of reasons, should be and has to be a mix of mixed income. Doesn't make any sense to do something that doesn't have an affordable piece.
I see us spinning our wheels here and getting nowhere, but go ahead, John.
I'm not of the opinion that the housing plan should be focused at any particular piece of property.
I agree.
It should look at what could be done in the town and where it could be done, but it shouldn't have a bias of where any of the proposed needs are gonna land until we understand what those needs are.
And that's the plan that Fran is putting together. So, Fran, at what time, I mean, I know that you were looking for a grant, and so we need to wait on that. We did approve that request last week,
Yes.
and you said you'd know right away.
That's right. We'll know March 7th.
March 7th,
Which
okay.
is practically right away.
So, at this point, rather than having this agenda item come back on March 4th, let's wait till March 11th, till we have some results from whether or not we've got the grant, and then know how long it'll take to complete that work. Fran?
And we do have a current housing production plan, and we do have a current master plan, and that does talk about town priorities and needs, and demographics may have shifted slightly, since it was written, but not tremendously so. So looking at our current housing production plan and our current master plan does sort of say what's needed. It does talk about sites and things like Prescott School are talked about, but if there's something else happening with Prescott School, then obviously that's not gonna go forward. Same thing with like Tarbell School, if that was on the list. But, looking at municipally owned sites is an easy place to look and evaluate because the town does have control over it. So that might be something that will always be considered. But it can be several months once we get the money to do a housing production plan, and I don't know if it'll take you any further down the road than where you are right now.
So your recommendation is to look at what we've already got?
Yes.
And then pull out what clearly can't be done, because there's clearly some things have happened since the last plan that make some of those conclusions irrelevant.
And what do you want to do with the country club? Because there can be kind of greater need things that are just, already defined in many places as current information. But if that's not what the town wants to do with this site, what does it want to do? And does it want to spend money in the direction? Does it want to go as far as it can without expending money? Those sorts of decisions could probably be made without any more larger study on housing. Instead, just more specific looking at this site and what people want for the site.
So I've heard two conflicting opinions from half the board and half the board, which puts me in an odd situation here. That one of those opinions is, do we want a committee that's broader in scope to understand all the housing needs, or do we want, and then the other side of the committee of this board wants something focused on the country club. Between now and March 4th, let's get that sussed out in your heads, what you want, what you think. And
4th or the 11th?
The 11th.
Well, because it won't matter whether or not we're gonna have a new
gotcha.
report, so
So
there's
back
no
to the
point to
4th.
delay it, yeah. Apologize, Mark, for
That's all right.
twisting that back around based on Fran's input. And let's try to find some way where we can move forward and debate that fully. At that point, we'll have a fifth member. Perhaps we need that fifth member to make a decision. I know that Art Prest wanted to make a comment. I saw another hand out there as well.
I think there might be an approach that would satisfy everybody. It's something that was pioneered some years ago by Professor Michael Porter at Harvard Business School. And it's used by McKinsey, Bain, BCG. And it starts off with an estimate of the situation. And you kind of get all the details written down and documented, and people agree to them. And that's followed after a lot of discussion with what they call OST, Objective Strategies and Tactics. So now you've got the background and the estimate of the situation. You've got an objective of what you want to do. It has to be defined. And then you start to develop strategies of how do you achieve those objectives based on the estimate of the situation. It has to be realistic. And then that rolls into tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's a very rigorous approach, and I've seen it happen many, many times, and it works extremely well. And hopefully that might satisfy everybody's concerns here. It would end up with a vision statement. It would end up with what are the issues we're trying to deal with, what are the things we have to get through before we can move forward, and it gets a lot of exposure relative to the public and the community at large. So I'm suggesting you might want to consider that kind of
Well,
approach.
that could be the guidance we would give to the committee. That's not something this board can effectively take on.
But it might be an approach you might want to consider, that's my point.
So,
Allison?
I'm just wondering if we wanted to review that, what would we Google, what are the kind of keywords? You may have said them at the beginning, but
What kind of keywords?
The approach.
Right, to understand that, what is it?
Give her the name of the approach again.
Well, I started off with the estimate of the situation.
Oh, you said there was a name.
But what
for
is the
this
name for the
approach.
process or something?
It's not a defined process per se, it's an approach that has been used for years, and it's a combination of those three things. You start off with an estimate of the situation. For example, what's been the history of the country club? How do we get it? What do we pay for it? How much land is there? What are the other possibilities in the case of the country club? And then you start looking at the objectives. What are we trying to achieve here? I mean, right now, we've got over $400,000 hole in our budget. We've got some problems coming at us that we're gonna have to deal with. So some of our objectives can be, we need more affordable housing. We need 55+ housing. We need revenue. Could be a lot of different things, and that would kind of be fleshed out within this committee. So once you have that nailed down, then you start to look, now that we have the estimate of the situation, we have some objectives that we want to reach, how are we going to reach them? That's where the strategy comes in. It's not a simple thing that you can just define as one thing. It's used. I've been involved in so many of these things, it's unbelievable. And it was pioneered, as I said, by Mike Porter at Harvard Business School.
What's his name, please?
Mike, who?
I'm sorry?
What's his name? Porter?
Mike
Porter,
Porter.
same individual who
Michael Porter.
developed the 5 forces.
Yeah. And he's written several books on strategies in this whole area. And I've worked with Michael in the past, a long time ago. And it's a very rigorous approach, which I think is needed here. Because if you don't, there's always going to be, well, we didn't do this, we didn't look at that, and da-da-da-da-da-da, so.
Okay, thank you. Hold on, Becky, we'll wait till we hear back from the public.
Thanks. Just as a taxpayer, when I first saw the charge, it just seemed like the decision had been made to go and do 55-plus housing on this club. And I know that it seems like the discussion's evolved a little bit, but I would like to just support Mr. Geiger and Ms. Pine's approach, which seems to be go find the highest and best use for this club. If there's an initiative to do something about the club, the primary goal should be what is the highest and best use for the club. And it seems to me that that's what the charge should be for this group. And the second, if you are to consider housing elsewhere in town, which is not dependent on the club, is exactly what Mr. Geiger suggested. But again, I just think as a taxpayer, I would encourage you not to have any preconceived ideas like housing or like a sewer if you're going to do something about this club.
Mr. Kleiner, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Speaking to as someone who's invested over $20,000 in the country club so far, I watch your meetings at home, and recently I've seen quite a bit talk about transparency and process. So I've got to say I'm more than a little disappointed that what it started as the exploration of an idea of Mr. Press for some housing at the country club and maybe generate some revenue is involved into the appointing of a committee to decide the whole fate of the country club. I don't think you've been that open about that. I think this is being done when it's off-season. People that use that facility, aren't talking with each other. They're not aware that there's this whole discussion that, the town may decide to get rid of the country club and that you're looking to appoint a committee to have that as part of the charge. I don't think you should do that. The other point that I would like to also make on this is that when the town purchased the country club as property, the whole idea was to keep it from being developed. It was to keep it from becoming a large housing development. And the minute that the town loses control of this parcel, if it's ever sold, you may think you're selling it to somebody for some golf course or something else, you're going to end up with housing there. And housing that will probably be a lot more dense than anything that we really want. I think that Mr. Press' proposal, I think it's something interesting and something that you should look into. But I think that this whole idea of going down a road to decide the whole fate of the country club, I don't think you've been very open about that. I don't think it's been publicized that that's one of the things. And the way that it involves from some simple little thing, I can understand how it all gets forward. And I don't really mean to cast aspersions, but I don't think it's been made that well known.
Well, I don't know how it's possibly more transparent than tonight, seeing this for the first time, as most of us are. So, point taken, and I'll try to make sure that we're more clear. As far as I know, this board can't make any decisions or determinations about the country club without town meeting. And I was planning on pushing that forward where we're continuing this discussion, but since we're going to table that till March 4th, hopefully that gives the townspeople a month to get off their keisters and come over and tell us what they want to do with the country club. Send us notes, send us emails, talk about it. If you guys want to keep it, keep it. If you want to get rid of it, tell us. But I don't think anybody's making any decisions. I think we're trying to understand we have a piece of property and it's got a break even or a little bit profitable situation, but capital-wise, I haven't seen a projection yet. That doesn't mean there's not one out there that says it's going to break even from a capital point of view. And I don't know if we can. So given that, I think that the town deserves an opportunity to understand measures that may make it completely balance sheet break even as a business unit, or what to do because it won't be so. And that is fully transparent so that people understand the whole picture and can make a realistic determination based on all of the facts. So that would be my approach, but that's, you know, not necessarily where the board may choose to go as an individual.
That's a great approach. I just think that one of your options that you may, as part of what you said, is it necessarily a bad thing to continue the operation of the country club at a slight loss as an amenity to the town?
Yeah, that's the townspeople's option.
Right.
If they know all the facts and what's coming down, and they decide that they want to spend $30,000 a year to keep that amenity, the town can always make that choice. Absolutely, John. Yeah.
I don't think the vision statement should be focused on should there or should there not be a country club. I think that focus needs to be what is the best and most desirable use of that property in the eyes of the voters and the taxpayers. That's what I would hope we could get out of that. And then we can build from there. But at this point, we don't we
know.
have people advocating for different things in the same place, and we don't really have a comprehensive sense of what could happen and where the majority feel, or what the majority feels that vision should look like. So I think it's a mistake to just, you know, talk country club versus something else. I don't think that's
Allison?
the right start.
I was just gonna kind of take that one step further and say, I'm not even sure that we as a community have enough of an understanding of the detail of the different alternatives to begin to have educated opinions.
Art, do you have something more to add? Then I'd like to move on. I'd like to move on if you have something more to add, please.
Yeah, I just want to make the comment that he's right. And John's right, but the people have to be educated as to what the issues are. What is it costing them? What revenue could it generate? What are the alternatives? Because if you were just to go and ask somebody right now, they wouldn't know. It was pretty obvious from the thread that I got involved with two or 3 months ago. Becky was on it. Allison was on it. People didn't know. They had no idea at the country club. They didn't know what it was costing the residents each year. They didn't know what the alternatives were.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, Allison helped educate the people in one area. So.
Okay, moving on.
Mr. Chairman, during your review of the proposed ticket tax warrant article, the board discussed adding a definition as to what constitutes an event. Based on the feedback from several members, I tried to come up with a simple definition, and I think Allison probably nailed it the best, in which we say that an event means performance by paid professionals in a venue with a capacity of 200 or more, giving a live performance within their professional field. So we wanted to do it as simple as possible to avoid confusion, and I think it does it. So if you go to page 33 in your packet, I've given you the total new charge of the with the event put in under definition. And another change that I made to it is that instead of paying it monthly, Allison recommended, and I agree with her, that we do it quarterly. So I changed the wording under section 5 to quarterly. So I'm going to place this on the warrant for town council further review and for public debate and discussion. I know this board received an email from Indian Hill concerning this ticket tax and their opposition to it. I did not make copies of that because I know you had received it directly. I don't know if you want to discuss that tonight and whether or not the board wants to formulate a response to that. As of now, the board voted to add this to the warrant for the town meeting.
Allison?
So I'm wondering, and it may be just that parts of this got kind of updated and parts didn't. Why is it still specifically eliminating athletics and Groton Dunstable events?
The board didn't tell me to take that out. The only thing I changed, the two things I changed, I added event here, and I changed this to quarterly. I didn't touch anything else. I didn't receive any other direction from the board members to change that. If
Okay.
you want more changes, get it to me and I'll make more changes.
Yeah, I mean, could we say that before the next meeting, everybody needs to get any thoughts, changes in?
That would be great.
We need to just have a deadline that we all know what it is and we can do it, because
Hold
I've
on,
got two
hold
or
on,
three
because
things.
I think-
didn't
Okay,
realize
that's
it was
fine.
going this fast.
I think in general, the board needs to agree, though, on a direction we're going. Last I heard, we knew we needed to change kind of the structure of an idea of what the event was. I didn't hear anything last meeting about removing the
Athletics.
removing Groton Dunstable from this tax. I don't, I apologize how to say that. I'm trying to say that the right way. Exempting them from this tax is what I'm trying to say. And I didn't hear anything last week about exempting athletic events, not exempting athletic events. Is that a change that?
From my perspective, when I submitted the idea that it should be a professional being paid for a live event within their kind of wheelhouse, to me, that should include athletics. And the intent of the professional is to eliminate, you know, yeah, we don't need a ticket tax on the boys soccer.
That I
varsity.
misunderstood your intent. I
But
apologize.
to me, if, you know, if the Bruins wanted to come to Groton School and host a game, you know, of some sort, that would potentially be included. I'm a little uncomfortable personally with treating the arts one way and athletics another way, kind of seemingly randomly. I don't object, you know, I don't think it benefits anyone to get involved in Groton Dunstable paying us taxes, vice versa, and around. I think we just need to be clear about, you know, when an entity wants to come in and use the Performing Arts Center, the middle school, is that a Groton Dunstable event? Is that not? I'm not really clear on
Right.
why we would call out GD. I had made a note that maybe we want to eliminate municipal entities, which would include GD, the tech, and the town of Groton. I don't know what, I'm just not clear why GD is being called out as
I'll tell you exactly why
completely
I
new.
included it. I can answer that
Yeah.
question. I was concerned about the Performing Arts Center. I was concerned about events, plays that the school puts on, and they do charge admission to some of those events. So I'm the reason that Groton
Yeah.
Dunstable is in there. I specifically wanted to make sure we weren't putting a ticket tax on plays and productions and chorus things that the school was doing.
And I think that that's covered because there are no paid professionals
Right.
at a play.
Okay, that's fine.
I
Yep.
also think that, you know, if there's a school dance, the children don't pay to get into the school dance, right? So there's no tickets sold to school
No.
dances, although they could. That could change.
I think they do
So-
pay to get into school dances.
Do they pay to get in the
Yeah.
school dances?
Yeah.
How
Oh,
else
that's
would you
right,
pay
they
for
do
the
it.
school dance?
Well, there's a event fee, right, $7, sometimes. Same thing for, the movie nights and stuff like that, right? But there's no performance being given by a professional.
Right.
The DJ, I would not consider as being, the DJ is
Right.
not performing,
It's
he's,
not a live performance in
supplying
your field.
entertainment.
Right.
Go ahead, John.
I think we need to address, at least in part, the difference between a school-sponsored activity and renting, let's just use the Performing Arts Center in the middle school as an example, renting that to some organization
Right.
that is gonna come in and charge for admission.
Right.
And also, in how do you administer those types of situations to make sure it gets collected and it gets paid? But I think there is a distinction between those two things, and we can find the right words to make it much, much clearer what those are.
Can I ask, are you suggesting that we would charge the ticket tax for an organization that's renting the Performing
I
Arts
don't
Center?
see how you can avoid that. It wouldn't surprise me if Indian Hill wanted to lease out their 1,000 seats to some performance organization that wants to come in, rent it, put on a show that's acceptable to them.
But setting aside Indian Hill, I was gonna raise a question also, but a concern about the fact that there are a lot of nonprofit organizations, and I suppose they're profit-making ballet schools that rent the Performing Arts Center, and the cost of running the Performing Arts Center is very high, and they charge, at least was in the past, when I was aware of
They
it.
still do.
And so those organizations where, the ballet recital is happening, they do charge tickets in part to cover the cost of the rental of the facility. So, in my opinion, I guess I could be, I'd listen to other arguments, but it didn't seem to me like that was the kind of place where we should be charging a ticket tax.
Are
Well-
the performers in the ballet school, i.e. the ballet students, are they paid professionals?
The great majority of them are not, but I think occasionally they will bring like one sort of professional type person to play the Sugar Plum Fairy while
Right.
the little kids dance. Or if there's a theater performance that involves music, I think sometimes they'll pay musicians to accompany them. So, maybe that's splitting hairs, maybe none of you feel like that would meet the criteria for a paid professional, but I think, we should be clear.
Let me just point out that I think this business of trying to use nonprofits as something to divide with, we need to be real
Right.
careful about,
Right,
because
I know
Indian
that,
Hill Music is a nonprofit organization.
right, and
So he's,
we can't use that as the definition, but therefore, maybe we need to, I don't know, get clear. I had a couple of other points I wanted to make. I think we need to specify in the definition of venue that it has to have a capacity for 200 or more, since that's what we also put in the event, that's where we're gonna charge, right? So,
That was
says that-
thrown in there, I'm not sure there was any real discussion around it, but it was thrown out as a number.
So if we're going to put a number in the event definition, we should probably also put it in the venue definition, just to be consistent. I also wondered, I assume that if we present this at town meeting as written as an up to 5%, that someone will ask the question, are we as a board planning to make a decision about what the percentage would be if it were going to be less than 5% prior to town meeting? Or are we gonna decide, do we imply, or do we mean to say it will be 5%?
This leaves it to the board to set that fee at a later time,
Although,
but you can't exceed 5%. You can set it at 1%, you can set it at 0.5%,
so I
you
would,
can set it at 5%.
I guess I would suggest that it would probably be smart for us to have decided that before town meeting so we can answer the question. And I also,
With the exception that one board can decide something and the next board can change that decision.
well, we could decide it for a period of 1 year or 3 years or something.
You can't-
Well, but, Barry, that's always true, so, the board has, if it's written that the board can change their mind, but still, I'm sure that as voters consider this option, it would be useful to be able to say what our decision is. And the one other thing that I wondered is whether there should be a provision for exceptions.
Okay, John?
just, the paper last week, the Groton Herald, indicated that the proceeds from the ticket tax would go to police and fire.
What?
The article that's in the Herald, if I remember right. And I don't know where that's coming from, because I
This
don't.
board never discussed it.
Hmm?
This board
No.
never discussed it.
That's what I'm saying, I don't know where it came from, because we haven't discussed it, and I know as one person, I've got other ideas, so, that I'd like to throw around and have people think about, so, maybe it's time to tell the public, there's no decision been made yet on how those, receipts, might be used within town government.
Wouldn't they just go into the general fund?
That's one alternative, but you could take and say that 10% of it or 15% of it's gonna go to X, 10% of it's gonna go to Y, and what's left goes to the general fund.
It would be a receipt that the town meeting would have the opportunity to expend. So you really can't direct this to a specific use. It's for operations, but you may decide that, well, now our estimated receipts are gonna go up by $50,000, say, I'm just using an arbitrary number. And now that $50,000 is gonna be used to hire whatever, or to conduct this process. So, while it can't be targeted, your receipts and your revenue is going to increase by this amount, and then the town meeting can decide how to expend that money,
Well, but
right?
isn't it the case that the town meeting could, as part of enacting the bylaw, identify some of it going in certain places?
You would have to amend this legislation to direct that money. The way this is written right now, it's a general fund receipt, which goes into the general fund of the town. But you're right, John, you can, but you'd have to amend this. I was not anticipating that when I drafted this.
And I don't know if we should.
No, that's a good point.
My guess is, I don't remember reading that in the Herald, but my guess is that there was a discussion that the town has costs for events, and they include police and fire protection and highway maintenance. Maybe
But
that's
the
where I
police
got
and-
confused, but
The
you're right.
police and fire, they pay, you're getting a detail officer. In fact, in the agreement
Mhm.
with the site plan that was approved by the town are requirements that Indian Hill, for instance, hire detail officers for designated intersections.
Right.
So it's more than that. And, I'm probably throwing the orange up in the air here, but you could allocate something from these going to education.
Mhm.
Some percentage of it always going to education, which is another area that is in need of additional funds. So we just need to explore what the kind of options are before somebody sells us on an allocation model that we don't even know where it came from.
I personally, I remember there was a bit of discussion around the meals tax and the room tax at the inn. And, I mean, I'm comfortable with it going to the general fund. I think we add another layer of administration if we are gonna allocate it someplace, and that's also a really big, long deliberation about what we should allocate it for, so it ties the hands of future boards more.
Allison?
So I'm just wondering what folks think, is there consensus that kind of using the paid professionals makes it reasonable to eliminate athletics and to take managed by Groton Dunstable out of here? Or is that something are those two things that people wanna hold on to?
I worry about, well, I guess if you sell tickets, so it has to be tickets sold and paid professionals would be the caveat. So in that vein, you're probably accurate with 200 or more paid professionals and selling tickets. You're right, you might come afoul of, a nutcracker where there is a paid primary ballerina or I apologize, don't know what the male ballet dancer's name is.
Ballet dancer.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Probably ballerina. So, you may run afoul of situations like that, or they may just choose, and not that I see that they're strong here, they do it at an act in Boxborough. That's where they do the Nutcracker. I think there's other facilities, although they might do that already. John?
I want to point out that many of the district's athletic activities charge an admission fee for people to come and watch the games. I was at the Townsend Groton hockey game a week or so ago on a Saturday night. It was Veterans Night, and because I am one, I didn't have to pay. But I saw everybody else that wasn't a veteran paying to get in. So we need to be careful about how many that is. I'm pretty sure that there wasn't 200 there, but I'll bet that where the seating is there could hold 200 or even more.
The students aren't paid.
Beg your pardon?
The students aren't paid. right? So you're setting up a
No, they're
triumvirate,
not.
you're setting up a triumvirate of three things have to be met, three criteria have to be met in order for it to be an event that's taxed. Has to be paid professionals, has to be paid tickets, and has to be a venue greater than 200 audience. And if you don't
Okay.
qualify any one of those three, then
It doesn't work.
there's no tax, there's no ticket tax, right? So because I've
Alright.
gone through the same iterations on you, I just think if we
Right.
set out logically, there's three passes you have to go through to whether or not you're gonna be charged a
Okay.
ticket tax. You know, is it fair and reasonable that, some of these facilities might see this as undue
You're
burden to
gonna
try to figure this out every time? Probably.
You're gonna get into another.
Right, so-
You're walking right into another mash. I'm going back to Indian Hill. The Orchestra of Indian Hill, which today is the primary, or prestige, or whatever, the major contribution. Those aren't professional performers.
I believe they're paid.
Many of them are just people who like to play their instruments, is that correct?
I do
And we
not know for
don't know
sure,
that answer. We don't have the information to answer
Well,
that
we
question.
But
ought to
I'm
find
pre-
that out.
I believe that they're paid.
The conductor is probably paid as an employee of the town, you know,
Yes,
excuse
but
me.
he's full-time on staff
Um,
there, so it could be different.
Did you have some information?
Well,
Dawn?
I used to be a dance teacher in my previous life. I was paid.
Right,
I also did perform during the shows, so,
right.
you know.
Which kind of leads me down the path that maybe we want to have, instead of this ticket tax, which is nebulous and seems to be wrought with challenges, is why don't we set up a permit fee for events? And yes, the permit fee would maybe a flat fee, and it would be, you know, it could be exempted by the board because it's under a certain amount of dollars based on our policy, right? The fees are under $5,000 or whatever, the below threshold is $2,000, we could exempt it. But there's another way to get what we want to do here, which is charge a permit for events. And that's, you know, without an event permit, you can't have an event. So I think that it might be worthwhile to go down that pathway where at that point, if someone wishes to be exempted, they would need to get permission, and we would be able to run that criteria of, you know, are they, you know, what's the criteria, rather than having an arbitrary tax that sits out there that doesn't get governed, that doesn't have judgment involved. So there's another option that we could consider. But anyhow,
I think that's worth considering.
so I'm fine with another pass. Allison, if you want to take another hit at the language, I'm interested to see how this goes down in 2 weeks.
I'm confused at
Okay.
what the direction is.
I'm a little confused too, but I think it's a good idea to explore perhaps the permit option, although that could get really onerous.
Exactly.
The
I
permit can be
guess-
set up exactly the same way that the ticket tax would be set up. How many attendees do you expect? You know, what type of event is it? And then there's a dollar value per attendee. And you could describe that just like you do for a building permit and other permits. You know, what's the capacity of the venue? What's the type of event, et cetera. And you can run that. I mean, all these things are gonna be complex. What we're doing here is extremely challenging because we don't want to negatively impact anybody. But we still want to recoup the natural costs of road wear and let's say, the additional, population influx that has as a natural challenge to a town. Whether or not that can be offset by, hotel taxes, occupancy taxes, or food taxes, I don't know. That's an argument we can decide. But I certainly could see that when you have more population, you have needs for more, you have more calls for fire, EMT staff, for issues that might happen. You might have more accidents happening on the road, right? So there's anytime you have density of people, you're gonna end up with more issues caused by density. And some parts of Groton aren't intended for that type of density without some changes to our services infrastructures. And that's a cost associated with that. Now, do I think that whatever is estimated here, $50,000 a year, is gonna make a dent in any of that? I really don't. I think it's a stipend, I think it's a contribution, but I think that it's not gonna make a dent in it. If it makes people feel better, fine, but I don't really think it's gonna have a impact one way or the other on the overall budget and our challenges going forward. It's not a magnitude. Yeah.
So as far as direction, I think that there's still a lot undecided here, but since Josh isn't here, this was his idea. I think the placeholder should remain on the town meeting warrant. And further thinking from all of us might help.
So I'm happy to work with Mark and kind of tweak this and potentially try and outline what an event permit could look like. I'm starting to feel like for this and a couple other things that maybe we want to think about having a workshop at some point where we can kind of hash the details out a little bit more
That's a good idea.
effectively than kind of this hit or miss of, is this the right thing? Not quite. Let's give it another week.
So noted, and a wise suggestion.
So my direction is to leave this on the warrant,
And wait.
work with Allison. Okay. Understood.
Hold a place on the
Yep.
warrant for it.
Mr. Chairman, I have no update on the budget. The Finance Committee is meeting Wednesday night at 7. I'm going to attempt to be at 2 meetings at the same time and attend that meeting with the Finance Committee as well as the Florence Roads Building Committee meeting that night. So I'll probably have more to update on the budget to the board at the next meeting. Before you get into other business, I do want to talk about a meeting that Barry and I had today with town council on the legal budget. I will let you know right now that our legal budget is 0.
Remaining.
Remaining,
You mean our
0 remaining.
balance?
Yes, I'm sorry. There is no money left in the legal budget through the January bill. A main reason for the expense that we've gone through is a case, Johnson versus the Board of Appeals. The town has expended through January bill $25,422, and the anticipated February cost thus far is probably gonna come out to about $5,000. So Barry and I had a meeting with town council today to talk about that amongst other things. I spent 2 hours with town council today. But the portion of the meeting that I want to alert the board to tonight is that we do have a need for some funding in the legal budget to get us through to town meeting. And what I would like to propose to the board is authorization to approach the Finance Committee for a reserve fund transfer Wednesday night of $30,000 to pay the Johnson case. Town council is going to petition the court to delay the case until next fiscal year and come up with a plan, not a plan, but an anticipated cost of a trial, because this is going to trial, as the board knows. And that way we can plan and budget for it in fiscal year 20 by not having any other additional expenses in fiscal year 19. So I would like the permission from the board to approach the Finance Committee for that, and then we can go to town meeting and do a line item transfer to get us through July and, through May and June this fiscal year. That's our proposal. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Barry?
Yeah, before we discuss requesting a reserve fund transfer, why don't we skip down to handle item number, Marlene, if you'll give us just a moment, we'll get right back to you next. Review and potentially approve contract for outside investigator. Why don't we handle that item, because that also might require some legal funds that we may need to ask for a reserve fund transfer on.
Good point.
Allison, you have the floor.
Did the draft contract make it into the packet?
No,
Did I receive a contract?
I forwarded out.
Yes, it was forwarded out to us.
Okay, so everyone has received that contract.
Yes.
Oh.
There's nothing in it that's dramatically changed. They have the ability to start potentially as soon as tomorrow, which is a problem since we have no funding. And their anticipated, time period to turn this around is kind of 2 to 3 weeks, was what they were talking about. The estimated cost, I think, was between $5,000 and $8,000-ish. We had talked about setting a cap on that initial, that they would notify us when they were getting close to, I think 5,000 was the number we had put out there. So I guess if folks are okay with the contract they got, you know, we can move forward with a motion that's contingent upon securing funding from the finance committee through the reserve fund transfer. I think that's kind of our only real option.
Okay, Becky,
So I just had a question where it says a member of the Board of Selectmen. Is that a decision that has been made? That there would just, I mean, we had discussed at our meeting that there were potentially 3 of us who would be interviewed.
Versus consist of a minimum of?
Yeah.
is
So,
that
I
the,
would-
who's the liaison will be with the contract, with the, law firm?
No, it states that they, it is anticipated that the investigation will consist of a minimum of 5 interviews with the following individuals. And then one of those individuals is a member of the Board of Selectmen, but
Right,
I think where that's a minimum,
yeah, I think the investigation goes where the investigation goes.
right.
Are there any questions pertaining to,
The contract, I
the
guess.
contract, the firm, the ideas? I mean, I wanna thank Allison for doing a tremendous amount of work and narrowing this down and
right.
coming to, get us this far, to this approach. And if the board doesn't mind, although it's, the policy's nebulous on this matter, I would like to let us ask Allison to remain point, for the investigation, or if there's questions or whatever, and if she feels she's out of depth or whatever, she can connect with the chair, since you're already on this process and already engaged with these individuals, rather than having another party come in. If the board doesn't like that, I'm happy to take it on. It is, you know, theoretically, the chair's responsibility to be the liaison to the council that's chosen.
If Allison's willing to do it, I'm totally happy to have that happen.
And I should have asked
Yeah.
Allison.
No, I'm fine with that, and I think it makes a certain amount of sense, as I wasn't one of the select board
Right.
members who was present for that portion of the meeting. I'm happy to contribute being the liaison to the group.
Okay, so,
So you need a motion to approve this?
yeah, Allison's request is that we have a motion to enter in a contract for this investigation with this law firm pending, contingent upon a, reserve fund transfer from the finance committee.
How much are you gonna request from the finance committee, 5 or 7?
I think we should request 10,
Yeah, I agree.
because we've got a 5 cap. They've said between 4 and 7, 4 and 8, but that gives us a $2,000 cap. We don't have to use it up, but if we request 10, that allows us to hit our cap and then evaluate what, well, we might have more information at that point. I don't wanna be constrained by not having and having to go back again and request like a $2,000.
You need the money in the legal budget if you don't spend it, so it's not gonna go to waste.
Exactly. John, you had a question? Or you had your arm up, excuse me, statement?
No, I did have a question. And the financing piece was one of it, but the other one is this. The investigator is gonna need some administrative support, setting up meeting rooms,
Mhm.
calling people to find out when they're available, and these types of things. And I don't think it's appropriate for all that to land in Allison's lap under the category of liaison.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what,
Human Resources Director would be the person to do
Yeah,
it.
we can
Okay.
request that work through Melissa Doig as our Human Resources
Okay.
Director.
we're all in agreement on that,
Or,
so.
I mean,
Right, and then Allison has
yes,
Melissa to work with.
Yeah.
in,
that's a fair
Yeah,
point,
that
John.
makes sense.
Should there be need to schedule something on town property, you know, and that's
Mhm.
fine, I think we can work through that. Anything further? Allison?
No.
Okay, so,
Want me to-
so let's, we're gonna do, here's the process that I think should unfold here. Let's make a decision, the board to vote whether or not we're going to enter in a contract contingent upon a reserve fund transfer. Subsequent to that, we need to take a vote on whether or not to ask the finance committee for reserve fund transfer for legal purposes. Everybody understand that
Mhm.
process?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Who'd like to make the first motion?
So I move that we enter into contract with Mead, Tellerman and Costa to, perform an investigation as outlined in the client fee agreement contingent upon reserve fund transfer, into the
Second that.
approved account.
Yeah.
Have you?
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Anything from the public? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposition or abstentions? All right, that was unanimous. All right. And now, the town manager's requested $30,000 for the, to cover the ZBA, trial, and then we would like $10,000 to cover contingency for the investigations. That's $40,000 total. Allison?
So I'm wondering, what does that mean for the remainder of the year in terms of routine legal
Yeah.
coverage?
So, so I can help with this.
Good.
You feel free, sorry, John, Mark. This gives us enough to cover the retainers for, Brooks and Durensis, plus what we anticipate from, Mazer. And then at town meeting in May, we can have reserve line item transfers to rebalance things and put more money that we think we need till the end of the year. Mark has requested Brooks and Durensis to present to us with a expectation document for what fees we can expect till the end of the year. We could probably also request that from Mazer, although really that wouldn't matter because those just come up as they come up, right? That tends to be a very, very small portion. Again, the majority of our budget's been eaten up by this lawsuit, and we have made an explicit request to Brooks and Durensis to request a delay until FY20 so that we can budget for it properly.
So when we talk about the 30,000 to cover the Johnson case, that's really then funding
us
that
through
would go
town
into
meeting.
the account
Right,
for other things for the
Right,
next few months?
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, get us to town meeting.
It's actually gonna, yeah, it
Right.
reimburses the Johnson expense.
yeah, basically, it refills that account that we unanticipated expense that we didn't know about this Johnson case coming up. In
Okay.
fact, it wasn't on the radar at all until it popped its ugly head recently.
October.
Right after it moved over to.
Yes, yes, it was unfortunate timing. Okay, so can I have a
So I'll make
motion,
a
please?
motion that we request a reserve fund transfer of $40,000 of the finance committee to cover anticipated legal expenses.
To be moved into the legal
Yes.
budget line item, okay, thank
A
you.
second.
Moved and seconded, any further discussion? Anything from the public? Mark, I'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
I heard that unanimous. Mark, do we
I'll
need
take
to
care
fill
of
out some paperwork for you?
I'll take care of it, that's my
Okay.
job.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Now, let's move back up to our other business item regarding, discuss Education Promise Act resolution request.
Want to come to the table, Carolina?
So the information was already provided to you guys along with the website, a lot of information to read. An update from the school committee is after we left our joint meeting, we were there for another 8 hours and decided, no, I'm only kidding. We were only there for a couple.
Hey, I'm not surprised.
Felt like
Only
8
there for a
hours.
couple more hours, but in those couple of hours, we did establish our resolution. It has been signed already. A sample of it was sent to Mark, so you can see what it basically stated. There was a draft resolution on that website. What our school committee decided to do was to customize exactly how the Promise Act would actually help our district specifically. We don't have a whole lot of EL students. We don't have a whole lot of economic challenge students, but we do have a lot of special education needs. We have a lot of charter. We have transportation that's not being funded. I can go on forever, but it is in that resolution. So we wanted to outline everything that this could do for us, specifically for our district. A copy of it has been sent to Dunstable. I do not believe that they have discussed it as of yet. At this point, our school committee has signed it. What I have done is we have a listserv for our school committee members in all of Massachusetts. I've basically been soliciting all school committees in the state of Mass to also get on board with the resolution. They're signing one. They're forwarding along, kind of like spidering out if it was something that our municipal board leaders were interested in doing as well, it would be just twice as strong of a message to our legislature. We actually have Kennedy coming to one of our school committee meetings. I'm not sure which one. Once we know that, we want to make sure that we actually show him how it is affecting our district. And we're going to basically be inviting different people there to speak in front of him so he understands how important it is for our district. With the lack of state funding, it's almost impossible for us to keep funding our schools without, with all the underfunded mandates. So that's what the position that we're taking. We can't generate our own revenues, but we can fight for more of a fair share. So that's what our committee's doing.
So I don't recall seeing a copy of what you guys decided on and voted on. And it's possible it
I
came.
haven't seen it either.
I did I not email it in an attachment to?
I don't think it was an attachment.
There was a
an attachment
summary,
to it? If it was,
No.
Marlene, I missed it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
I
Can you
sure.
send it to us again?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
if you can send that to us, what I'd like to
Yeah.
do then is table, I mean,
Yeah,
if
sure.
anybody has any questions, let's ask them now and get them out the door.
Yeah.
But I don't want to vote on anything distinctly different from what, excuse me, as an individual member of this board, I think it would be in poor judgment to vote on something distinctly different from what the school committee has come together representing our mutual interests in education for the townspeople. So I'd like to wait until the 25th perhaps
Sure.
with a copy of that. In the meantime, if the board has any questions or members of the public have any questions regarding this, let's get those out so that we can have a quick and efficient, perhaps signage or just discussion on the 25th. Allison, I'm sorry, Becky.
Since I won't be here, I'm totally in favor. I think whatever they wrote, we should sign. There was a front page article in the Globe this morning about the fact that, all of the money is going to the places that need it the most, and the needs of districts like ours are not being even recognized. So I think we need to do whatever we can do to bring that plight to the forefront of people making decisions.
Yeah, anybody else? Okay, Marlene, thank you so much.
Sure.
If you have any words of wisdom for us, guidance on what you guys decided, how you differed.
Basically, when we, it's the same old story, unfortunately. And actually, two of your own members who've been on the school committee, it was the same old story when you guys were on the school committee. Underfunds,
Yep.
it's the same items that are underfunded. They promised us the world to regionalize. You regionalized, they didn't give you the money for what your whole purpose of regionalizing.
Yeah.
So I certainly can speak to it. Allison and John can certainly speak to it. It is the same exact story. The difference is now there are some very loud school committee members across Massachusetts that are joining together to try and fight against it at this point. We have to start doing something, and if stamping our feet and yelling loud is the only thing we can do, then we're going to do it.
All right.
So,
Excellent. All right, thank you very much,
Thank you,
Marlene.
Marlene.
Appreciate
Yep.
the school committee's leading the charge on this. Okay, next item on the agenda is my item, and I will be reading something. On Monday, January 28th, 2019, the Select Board held a regular meeting during which the board discussed whether to initiate an investigation concerning allegations received against the town manager, Mark W. Haddad. The allegations were brought by an appointed member of the Fire Department Task Force Committee and concerned an incident occurring on January 7th, 2019 during the course of a committee meeting. During the board's discussion relative to whether to conduct an investigation and following reminders of the chairman, members of the board were intentionally cautious in making comments to the complaint in hand only and focusing on whether to conduct an investigation and how to go about doing so. Member Pine, however, made comments that the investigation should be expanded beyond the allegations advanced by the appointed member of the committee based on having heard, quote, rumors or, quote, secondhand reports, which can only be assumed to involve Mr. Haddad. Member Pine further commented that others who experienced similar behavior may have been silenced from coming forward in the past. Member Pine's comments about expanding the scope of the investigation do not reflect the opinions or thoughts of the full select board. and making the comments that she made, Member Pine was speaking on her own behalf. The board neither supports nor endorses Member Pine's comments in this regard. We disagree with them fully and completely. The comments Member Pine made as to the scope of the investigation were inappropriate, unfortunate, and unfair, and should not have been said. The board would be ill-advised to expand an investigation based on unsubstantiated rumors and/or uncorroborated secondhand information, and the board will not be doing so in this matter. We will not be offering a further statement on this matter until such time as the investigation is complete and we have a full report from the investigator setting forth the investigator's findings and conclusions.
And
Thank you.
may I,
Yes, I recall your note to me.
I actually, I agree with a certain amount of what you've said, the conclusions certainly. And as I have thought about it, I actually don't think that I handled that situation as well as I should have. Hindsight is always 20/20, and I've had some more time to reflect, and I regret some of the language that I used, specifically some that you mentioned. And I particularly regret and want to apologize for causing additional work for my fellow board members. We have got some difficult issues before us. I think we're all working really hard. And I value the fact that the board has done a good job of working together, and I want to do my part to keep it that way. So, thank you.
Okay, the next item on our list is consider requesting town manager total compensation comparisons from the personnel board and getting me speech therapy, apparently. We can't let the town hear that. So this is a request that came out of some deliberations we had, where we would like to make a official request from the personnel board to do, as everybody knows, we're in the process of a renegotiation of the town manager's contract, and we'd like to get some feedback from the personnel board. So would anybody like to make a motion on this item?
I move that we request the personnel board undertake a total compensation comparison for the town manager position pending contract negotiations.
It's been moved.
Second.
Do we want to put a date on it? Or is that someone
That's
will
up,
be
that's up to the
communicated back
subcommittee.
and forth?
We've elected to put a date on it. It's
Well, I
clearly
think-
they
I
can't
think there's-
proceed with their work
Put a
without
date,
having-
but of when it needs to be completed by.
Right. I mean, I'm wondering whether that, we want
Otherwise
that
it
in the
won't.
motion or just as a, talking point when we reach out kind of thing.
What's the board's pleasure? Would you like to put a date on it that we'd like the work to be done by?
I think we should.
Would you like to recommend one, John?
I'm thinking middle of March.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
Okay, is that acceptable to our negotiating member that's present?
Yes.
All right, so we'll accept that as a friendly amendment. Allison?
Yeah, I mean, can we put in maybe the 11th, which is a Monday, randomly, but we have tentatively scheduled meeting dates on Thursday mornings, so that would, give us a little time.
I see. Yeah, because the 15th would be a Friday.
Right.
All right, well, or you can just do it the next week.
We can, that just gives us 3 meetings without compensation information, but I don't feel strongly either way.
Okay, so I'm more comfortable with the 15th, just given that.
That's fine.
Yeah,
March
it's-
15th
yeah.
is fine.
All right, so the motion is now, as I heard it, and Allison is accepting a friendly amendment that we request a total compensation comparison for town manager's positions from the personnel board by March 15th. Is that the way everybody else heard it, understands it?
Yep.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion by the board? Anything from the public? All right, all those in favor? I heard that unanimous. Any abstentions or, okay, great.
Is that something that I should be reaching out to the personnel board to let them know, or do you email them, or how do we?
Why don't we authorize you as part of our subcommittee to send the board's the board's request.
Okay,
If you would like the chair to do it, I'm happy to do it as well.
I'm perfectly happy to reach out to the
Okay.
personnel board, thank you.
All right, on ongoing issues. Ms. Mr. Haddad?
Senior Center Building Project, we have officially requested a change of project superintendent. The new project superintendent starts officially on Monday, the 18th, so we're very happy moving forward. We had a roof inspection come out today to review the installation of the roof. We're expecting that report back. That will dictate next steps on the project. But I'm very pleased with the work that Greg and Bob Garside are doing on the project. So I'll continue to keep you updated, but we do have a new project superintendent from Nelco starting.
What does that mean?
That means we have somebody that is gonna be, the contractor has somebody on site that manages the project, but that we're comfortable with. We were not comfortable with the person that
So
did that.
that's a personnel
It's
change
the-
within the same
Within
company?
Nelco, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's
Sorry
an
if I wasn't clear.
interface change between.
That's what I thought, but.
Yep. With regards, moving down to the Florence Roach School Feasibility Study Committee that Allison and I sit on.
Yeah.
The committee is meeting tomorrow night, weather permitting. If not, then the full committee's meeting Wednesday, but the subcommittee on the OPM selection process is meeting tomorrow night to make a recommendation on which OPM we're going to recommend that the district hire for the project. We received 13 applications, proposals. We have gone through to narrow the list down to a few to interview. We'll decide that tomorrow night on who we're going to interview, and then we'll make a formal recommendation to the school committee. And Allison, help me here. I think we're planning on doing that by end of March?
Is that a little earlier than that?
Maybe the
perhaps?
middle of
But-
March, maybe the
yeah.
middle of March. So that project is well underway.
Nice.
Once the OPM is brought on board, the next process, which Allison and I sit on that subcommittee as well, is the subcommittee to hire the designer.
Right.
That will actually go through the process. So it's a good process, and like I said last week, Allison is making sure we cross Ts, dot Is, so things are going well
Yeah,
there.
I will let you know, as Allison probably is aware, she got the same phone calls and emails I got, that the schools are releasing 1 hour early
Right.
tomorrow, and they've canceled ski club, and they've canceled all afternoon kindergarten and stuff, so, I don't know if the school
Yeah.
committee has a policy where it doesn't hold meetings on days where it
So
lets.
We're
the
meeting here at the
schools
town
go.
hall.
We have,
Okay, so,
it's been reposted from 6 o'clock at the middle school to 6:10 here.
okay,
Signage will go up on the doors at the middle school to let everyone know of that change of venue.
great.
And we will proceed to meet. Yeah,
So
We're very
6:10 in town hall instead of 6 PM at the
Right.
middle school when it was originally.
right,
Correct,
and if
okay.
the weather is so horrendously inclement that we decide even that can't happen, then it'll happen Wednesday night in conjunction with the regular full
Okay.
board meeting.
So I'll be in 3 meetings at the same time.
Right,
And that's all I
At least two will
have.
be in the same place, Mark.
Oh, I do have an update on the board and committee appointing voting procedure. Josh, Michael and I, Mike Bouchard and I met Friday morning, and we have developed a process. I'm sorry, this is a different issue. Not your appointing
you
process. I'm talking about the
Review-
process for the committee ballot questions.
Reviewing ballot questions.
Yes.
Great, which we would like an update on that, we'll
Okay.
take it, so go
I'll
for
give
it.
you that update. So we met on Friday, and we outlined a process in which we are going to follow. And essentially what the process is, that once a ballot question is determined by the Board of Selectmen, what a yes vote means and what a no vote means on that particular ballot question will be drafted. Once it's drafted, it will be turned over to to a group of individuals that are designated by the town clerk to review the question and provide feedback, and whether or not that question should be altered to make more sense. That is what will end up going into what a yes vote means and what a no vote means in the handout that we send. That's separate from the argument
Sure.
for and against. But it's just so that people have a clear and concise understanding what a yes or no vote is. But now I need to correct something and say I was right all along, and that I received bad information, and we're gonna go back to where I was right all along. We can't put that on the ballot.
Why
I
not?
had said before that the ballot, yes or no, couldn't be on there, and then I was corrected again by town council today. It cannot be placed on the ballot.
Right, you can't put the yes or no arguments actually on the ballot.
Goes
itself.
out in the warrant.
Only
It
in the
goes out
warrant.
in the handout,
The
correct.
state does it that way
Yeah,
always. It's
Yeah.
never on the ballot.
Now, the state does
No, the
put.
states are
No,
on the
the state
ballot.
ballot questions do, but that's
Yeah.
because the Constitution outlines that, the Massachusetts State Constitution outlines that. and what the process is. But for local ballot questions, Proposition 2.5 overrides, or initiative petitions and things like that, we cannot put what a yes and no means on the ballot. That was
But we-
confirmed by town council today.
But we can put it in the
In the-
thing that
Which
goes,
we do now.
that
The
gets
mailing and the
mailed.
warrant.
Is which we
goes-
do now.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
which we did.
Which we do all the time, yep.
Okay. All right, any,
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
thanks, Mark. Any liaison reports? I'm hearing none. All right, let's move on to regular scheduled meeting minutes of January 28th. Last week, there was a challenge with some intended changes. Allison, have you, you seem to be in objection to those changes last week that Member Pine was recommending. Can we get through that today on debate, or what do we want to do here?
Allison, I think you didn't object to the first one.
That's correct. It was,
Which I made that change.
It's,
I mean, in the reality of.
well, excuse me, Dawn, it's not made in our packet.
Should have been.
It's page 2 of January 28th. Down at the last paragraph at the bottom, the second sentence, it should say, it is possible that this would be a covered expense.
I made it on mine, on my computer, just not in the packet, so.
Ah, okay.
it'll get posted to the website properly according to what Dawn has, not
Right.
what's in our packet. So, go ahead, Allison.
I was just gonna say that my opinion or stance hasn't changed. That said, the minutes don't need to be approved unanimously, so
That's true.
I'm not sure that it's worth a big to-do either way.
I think perhaps it would make sense to vote on an amendment then, if there's a contention on an amendment. And if the amendment doesn't go down, then we stick to the, so one amendment has passed without discussion, and that's what's already been discussed and decided on. The second amendment, would you like to propose that officially, Becky, and we'll vote on it as an amendment or not?
Well, I'll just say, my suggestion was to strike that word again. This is in the top of page 3, the line 4.
Yeah,
But, it's not a huge deal to me. I'd go along with whatever the majority feels.
So in absence of a request for an amendment that we vote on, we're gonna stick with what's in the packet on that sentence.
Okay.
All right, so I'm not hearing an actual motion to amend, so we'll move forward then. Okay, all those in favor of the minutes of January 28th?
Was there a motion?
I
No,
move we approve the minutes with the single
Sorry.
amendment as discussed
yes,
of
thank you.
January 28th.
All right, all those in I need a second on that, excuse me. I'm just trying to get out of here fast.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of January 28th, 2019 with a single amendment that has previously been discussed, please second by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? I heard that unanimous amongst the four of us. On to the minutes of February 4th. Anything from anybody on this? If not, can I have a motion, please?
I move that we approve the minutes of February 4th as presented.
It's been moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I heard that unanimous as well, and Allison has a comment.
Just a question. Marlena has actually just sent me the
Yep,
document that the school committee voted to pass as a resolution. I'm
Yep.
happy to read it if people want to do that tonight. I'm not sure there's any real benefit or need to do so, but we can if folks are interested in doing that tonight.
Be nice to get it out of the way.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
there's,
I
So-
think she sent it to everybody.
She did.
she
it's in our
probably
email.
did.
All right, do we want to read it so the public can hear it?
That's probably
Sure.
smart, yeah.
Okay.
So how about this? I move that the Groton Select Board pass the following resolution as passed by the Groton Dunstable Regional School District School Committee. Whereas free public schools available to all students without exception are foundational to our democracy and are required by the state constitution, and whereas all of our students, no matter where they live, deserve high-quality public schools that teach the whole child and provide them a rich school experience that addresses their academic, social, and emotional needs. Whereas the state's foundation budget formula, which determines state aid to each district, has been woefully out of date for years, thereby underfunding our districts by more than $1 billion a year for essential educational services. And whereas the state's foundation budget formula underestimates the cost of special education services, insurance benefits, and regional transportation, and fails to account for unfunded mandates, charter school reimbursements, and the increasing importance of technology in education. And whereas an updated foundation budget formula could bring Groton Dunstable Regional School District up to $563,200 in additional state aid each year, allowing this district to move closer to providing all students with the education to which they are entitled as residents of the Commonwealth. And whereas the legislature failed to pass any foundation budget legislation in the last session, leaving districts, educators, and students without the funds necessary to support the schools our students deserve in every district in the state. Therefore, be it resolved that the Groton Select Board urges the legislature to approve and fully fund a new foundation budget formula by May 1st, 2019.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion from any other member on the board? In full fairness, has everybody had a chance to digest and recognizes and is okay with this? All right, I'll take is anything from the public? All right. I'll take a vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great, so,
Mary, we'll have that
procedurally,
typed up for you to sign.
so we can sign that. Okay, great, thank you so much. So we'll sign that at our 25th, our meeting on the 25th. All right,
The,
You mean it won't go out?
that's what I was gonna say, the
So
the
that
school
should go
committee
to you
authorized the
and-
chair to sign on behalf of the
oh,
committee.
great, so I'll sign it,
Somebody-
I'll sign it and then
Yeah,
send
you
it
sign
out.
on behalf of the board.
Exactly.
And then
I can
send
do
it.
that and send it out, yep.
We'll
Yep.
get it out to Harrington and Kennedy
Kennedy.
as soon as possible.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'll take care of that for everybody then, thank you.
Thank you.
And unless there's anything further, going
I'd like
once?
to, last minute request a vacation day tomorrow, if that's all right with the board.
Aren't you
And I
supposed to
thought you
be
were
here
gonna
at
be at a committee
6:10?
meeting at 6:10.
I'm gonna be on the phone for the committee.
A
okay.
quorum of that committee will be present.
All right, then, I mean, you can do, take a vacation. So accepted.
Thank you.
All right, anything further? Going once,
Can I
going
ask for a
twice?
vacation day too?
Yes, Allison, you may have as many vacation days as you can take. We're adjourned, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank goodness.